Okay.
He's been captured for posterity on Street View.
David Davis has been captured for posterity on Street View. That's
about 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Where? Outside the shul. Would you pass me a Chumash, please? No, somewhere else.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Near his house.
Near his house. Okay. That's lovely. 50 years from now, people will remember there was someone like David Davis who walked outside his house and got caught on Google cameras. Okay, gentlemen, lady and gentlemen, actually. So apologies for starting late. As I said, I had a parents' evening, so I got held back a little bit, and that's got exacerbated by the fact that my car went into MOT today. I said to people, I said, when your car goes into MOT, it's like a mini Yom Kippur. You just don't know mi yomos. It goes in. What are they going to say? Are they going to say 45 pounds for the MOT? Are they going to say 400 pounds because your brakes aren't working? Are they going to say 4,000 pounds, your engine's shutting down? You just don't know. They're going to just say, don't even bother. Don't even bother fixing it. You just don't know what they're going to say. So they found some issue. I knew that had an issue. I told them to fix it. Last time they tried to fix it, they were unsuccessful fixing it. Hopefully this time they'll actually fix it. The most annoying thing is when they say, okay, you need a new part, and they spend 350 pounds on the part and about 2 hours putting it in. By the time you pay 450 pounds and you drive your car, and they didn't fix it.
It's something else, yeah.
But it's something else. And they say, well, look, we did the best we could. And sometimes you're like, I appreciate the fact that you did the best you could.
I'd like you to take the parts back now, please.
Yet somehow you think that, 450 pounds on the best you could when you messed it up is just not good enough. Okay, I'd like to speak a little about Shemitah tonight. And there's a few points I'd like to say about Shemitah. I saw one very nice idea before at davening when I was just looking through a sefer to see if there was anything else I could find. And the idea that was brought is the following. I think it's a beautiful thought. When it comes to mitzvahs, not always do all mitzvahs have a reason, or a reason that we can understand. But we can always try to attribute a reason to the mitzvah. And if it's something that we understand, something that we know, and something that we appreciate to be a value or a virtue in another instance, we can say, well, okay, so therefore this is also going to be a value and a virtue for this as well. And therefore, what is the value, what's the virtue of the mitzvah of Shemitah? There are many things that could be said. There was take a break. Once every 7 years, you have to take a break from planting, you have to take a break from all pruning, farming, etc., etc. And what you had to do is you had to leave your land lie fallow, and your job really was to sit and to learn Torah. And there's an interesting verse that you find, page 700 if you want to, in the Art Scroll Chumashim, and you're in chapter 25, verse 20. So it says the following: V'nosna aretz period. We'll start at 19, verse 19. The land will give its fruits, v'achaltem l'seiv, and you will eat and you will become satisfied, v'shaftem levetach aleh, and you will sit on it and you will be comfortable there. V'chi somra, and if you were to say, Manocha b'shana shvis, what are we going to eat in the 7th year? Hein la nizra v'la nasaf es tefuach seinu. We've not planted, we've not picked up any tefuah, any grain. So God says, I will command my blessings to you in the 6th year. And then it will make enough tevuah, enough grain for 3 years. So the end of the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year, until you can start planting new grain and getting new grain. That's the promise that God gives us. But beyond that, there's a very important point. We're going to discuss a few things about this part of the Parasha. I'd like to start with the following. And we'll give you a mashal. I read this parable. It was a very sweet, interesting parable. There was a pedagogue, a teacher. There was a very, very good teacher. And the king got this teacher to come and to teach his son. And he had his son for 3 years, and he taught him all sorts of things, maths and sciences, etc., etc. And he comes back to the king after 3 years. He goes, I've done a good job. The king starts testing his child, and he sees, wow, he's really done a brilliant job. This kid really knows his stuff. Sometimes you have teachers that really are able to give over the material, and sometimes you have teachers, your kids come home. So what did you learn? It was about history. I'm like, yeah, this is a history lesson. Of course it was about history. He goes, no, but what did you learn? 1096, Crusades. Yeah, what else? Oh, that's it. And they give you this very, very basic idea, and you think either my kid or the teacher, somebody's messing up over here. But here you had a teacher that did a brilliant job, and this child knew basically everything. And the child comes to the parent, and the king or the says, "I'm so proud of my prince, and he's done such a brilliant job, and so happy the way you've done it. I want to reward you. I want to reward you handsomely. Not only that, I'd like to make you my minister of education. It seems you're an expert at education. I want to make you my minister of education." And the fellow says, "That's brilliant. I just want to do one more thing. There's one more thing I need to teach your son. And after I teach your son that one thing, then I'll give him back to you, and then we're all good." So he says, "Okay, great. But I need to teach your son this at my house." "Okay, how far is your house from here?" It's about, I don't know, 2-day drive, ride, whatever it was. They used to take the camels. So they got into their horse and buggy, and they rode out all the way to the teacher, and they come inside, and the teacher sits down. He says, "Can I please have your hand?" He says, "Yeah." Click. And he puts on a handcuff, and he handcuffs one arm. He goes, "What are you doing?" Click. Handcuffs the other arm. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And the teacher takes out a stick, and he starts beating the kid 50 times. Boom, boom, boom. Hitting the kid, beats the kid bloody, and then undoes them. "Okay, we're going back home." We go back home. They go back to the palace. He walks into the palace. The king has one look at his son. He is obviously not a happy bunny. Not happy at all. And he has one look at this kid. He goes, "What did you do to my son?" He says, "Daddy, he hit me. He handcuffed me." He's giving this whole story how he got beaten up by this king, by this teacher. And the king said, "Forget it. Scrap everything. No reward. No ministerial post. Death penalty. Don't beat up on the prince. It's not a good idea." I remember I had a friend who they went skiing in Austria, and as he was going, there was somebody waiting by the lift and was taking a long time. So he zoomed past, scooted past, pushed the person over a little bit, and went right past them. And his friend, as they're on the lift, said, "Do you just realize you shoved one of the princesses of Holland?" Because the king of Holland used to come skiing in the Arlberg, in the Austrian province of Arlberg in Tyrol. They used to go skiing there, and it was like, "A what?" He says, "Yeah, I mean, the bodyguards were ready to grab you, but the princes were like, just leave him alone." You don't start with royalty. You just don't. What are you doing? So he's on his way out to be hung, or hanged, actually, if you want to be correct. Yeah, people don't get hung, they get hanged. But he's on his way to be hanged. And the king says, one second. I just want to know one thing. After all that, I offered you money. I offered you glory. I offered you a post. Why would you do something so stupid? Why would you take my son and beat the living daylights out of him?" He says, "Your Majesty, I need to explain something to you. One day your son's going to be the king. But your son's grown up with a silver spoon in his mouth. Your son's grown up. He's never had to fend for himself. He doesn't know what it means to be punished. So you can have somebody struggling, poor, who doesn't have the money to buy a stamp. So what does he do? You use a bit of heat, and you try to get the stamp off of one of the letters that's been sent, affix it to another letter, right? That's stealing. That obviously is stealing, and you're not allowed to do that. I didn't know, but there seems to be quite a big market of fake stamps. People actually, I didn't know that people actually make fake stamps. I knew that they made counterfeit. Hi, Phil, come on in. I knew they make counterfeit money. Did you know they make counterfeit stamps? Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember once, I think we got a letter back, and there was it was sound down there. It says counterfeit stamp. Please restamp. Now you don't know where you bought it from somewhere. I don't know where we got the stamp from. I can't remember if it was in the shul or if it was a private thing. But somebody sent me a letter saying counterfeit stamp. So you had to restamp it. Obviously, we didn't mean to. Not for 52p. Who's going to, who's looking to steal 52p off the post office? I mean, if you're selling thousands and thousands of counterfeit stamps, that's probably a very, very good business. But I didn't gain anything by sending a counterfeit stamp. All right, so I put on a regular stamp. So the guy's going to have a counterfeit stamp, or a guy's going to reuse a stamp, and he's going to be found out, and then they come to the king, and the king's going to say, "This man is stolen from the treasury 10 lashes." And they're going to beat the guy 10 times. Says another fellow, he's Nebuch, he didn't have anything to eat, and he's walking around, and he shoplifted a chicken off the butcher's shelf, and he got caught. He was lucky the butcher was running after him with a knife. The butcher didn't catch up to him. He got caught, stolen the chicken, 20 lashes. He says, I wanted your son to know. Those times you can get bashed up, it hurts. It's not simple to just give away punishment like that. I need to teach him one more thing. That was the last thing I need to teach him. One day you're going to be the king. One day you're going to be in charge of an entire country. And different things are going to come to your court, and you're going to have to make a judicial decision about these things. Unless you understand the gravity of the punishments that you're giving out, unless you understand really what it is that you're doing, you cannot really justly give out the punishments. So the king said, that's amazing. Okay, obviously he pardoned the fellow and he gave him back his money, etc., etc. That was the parable that was said. But the point was, and it's true in so many different instances, can you really comment on somebody else's state if you've never been through what he's been through? Okay? And I spoke about this once. I can give few examples about this. I mean, the simple example would be, and it's something that, thank God I don't really understand. I'm starting to understand. And I say it's a start. Yeah, come on now. It's a start. So next week I've been asked to be on a panel about mental health. I'm starting to understand the difficulties of mental health that people suffer. But if you've never had a mental health struggle yourself, if somebody's never been depressed, they just don't understand what depression is. If somebody's never had anxiety, they just don't understand what that is. So what are you going to say? I'm anxious. All right, don't be scared. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling sad. All right, listen to a comedian. Maybe you'll get happy. It's more than that. It's so much deeper than that. Until you understand really deeply what it is that that person is going through, until you've actually lived it yourself almost, it is impossible to have a true understanding of it. And therefore, we come over here to the case of Shemitah. Come here, you can sit down if you want to. All right, fine. You come to Shemitah. Shemitah is a very, very interesting time because remember, in the olden days, people were subsistence farmers, which meant you had to farm in order to survive. There wasn't supermarkets. Today, it's very, very easy. We don't understand how easy we have it today. I love that story Rabbi Barry Katz once told when he came. Do you remember the story he told? He came here 2 years ago, Rabbi Katz, and he told this story Pesach time when he spoke here in Shul. And he said there was a Russian fellow who had come over in the 1980s. He was an exchange student. And he had come over, and Rabbi Katz said, I took him to Tesco. And we're walking through Tesco, and suddenly I'm talking to myself. I realized the guy's not answering. And I turn around and I look back 5 meters and the guy's lying on the floor and he's fainted. And he went over and we revived him. And he said, what is this? Like Olam Haba? You're like, no, this is Tesco. I've never seen a place like this before. They didn't have that kind of plenty in Russia in the 1980s. You walked into a shop, he says, English people probably have nothing in the world to complain about. What would they be able to complain about? I mean, look at this. Look at this. It's heaven. Fresh fruit every single day, and look at the variety, and meat and chicken and fish and all sorts of toiletries and cereals and condiments. I mean, you're going to a regular shop. Now, I've asked Johnny Carr once. I think, you know Johnny. Johnny runs Sainsbury's. He runs big shops. He says like a Sainsbury's superstore down by Heaton Park, one of that size, I think they run about 40,000 lines. 40,000 different items in one shop. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-boggling what we have. So for us to imagine somebody not having is hard. For us to imagine not even having food is hard. Sadly, there are people out there in the world that don't have food. Plenty of people in this country, plenty of people in Israel. The poverty line in Israel, there's a lot of people living below the poverty line where things are very, very difficult, very tough. We're just in Israel, it's food-wise, it used to be, I remember the olden days, remember when the shekel was 8.5 to the pound? Yeah, you used to go and you felt like an absolute gevir. You walked in. Remember, we took a taxi, and the taxi was 14 shekel. And the guy I was with, who was from England, gave the guy 20 shekels. And I said, the taxi ride was 14 shekels. You gave him a 50% tip. Nobody gives a tip like that. I mean, who gives 6 shekels as a tip? He goes, look, I got into the taxi, I asked him to turn on the air conditioning, he turned on the air conditioning. I asked him to turn on the meter, he turned on the meter. And all in all, I gave him 6 shekel. That's not even 75 pence. Yeah? I remember going back with Sheirut. We took a taxi together. 3 of us took a taxi together from the airport to Yerushalayim. And it was meant to be 70 shekels a person. And in the end, the guy took us, he says, no, it's 80. And there was one guy in the back. There was a bocher in the back, a young non-married fellow. And he was haggling about those 10 shekels you cannot imagine. And I'm sitting in the front and saying to myself, am I really going to fight with a guy about £1.25? Really? It's not worth the hassle. It's not really a lot of money. We live in a generation where we're so blessed, where we don't understand what it means not to have. But there are people out there that don't have you. That's what I'm saying. I went to Israel. Now it's gone a lot more expensive. Food in Israel is about as expensive as it is here. At one point, there was a protest because you could get cottage cheese cheaper in Berlin. Israeli cottage cheese was cheaper in Berlin than it was in Tel Aviv. And they had a major protest about it because I said, wait a minute, this stuff is being made in Israel. It's been transported in cooled vehicles or something all the way to Germany. Because how's it going to get there? It's cottage cheese. You can't just send it like that. And after all that, it's still a shekel cheaper to buy it in Germany than it is to buy it in Israel. How crazy is that? Well, people don't have food. And so wealthy people could say, I don't understand this whole thing, not having food. People come to you and they say they really, they're struggling financially. If you've never struggled financially, how are you going to understand them? How are you really going to be able to feel for them? 1 year, every 7 years, nobody was allowed to plant. And when nobody planted, then no matter how wealthy you were, where are you going to get food from? Right? You had to somehow come about food, but it wasn't so easy. It wasn't like we have today. You didn't just walk into Tesco. So now everyone's asking. V'chi tomru, everyone's going to ask the question, Manocha b'shana hashvis. What are we going to eat? For the first time, even the man with a lot of money is saying, what am I going to eat? Because if I'm not planting and I'm not farming, where's my food coming from? Right? And that was a very, very deep point. I thought it was a very beautiful point. The idea that people need to learn other people's struggles as much as you can to try to understand people's struggles. And when you understand that person's struggle, only then can you really feel for that person. And only then can you give that person the help they really need. Otherwise, you're guessing. And now, again, it's not terrible. Of course you could guess. Of course you could try to give the help that you can. But if you've never known what it is to go to bed hungry, can feel it like that. We told the story here about the fellow already who gave so much charity, who said, I was an orphan. Right? Remember the story? I told it here, right? I was an orphan. The fellow said, there was a fellow here in town who was very wealthy and he used to give a tremendous amount of charity. And I think the HMRC came to him and they said, it doesn't make sense. He says, look, I was an orphan. My father died very young. And when we had a trip in school, I always had to stay home because my mother didn't have the money to send me. And I remember what it felt like to be left out. And I have a soft spot for tzedakah. I have a soft spot for people that don't have money. And so therefore, when I hear of people that are struggling, I can't bear it, right? But here's somebody who grew up with nothing and made it big. And because he grew up with nothing and he made it big, therefore, now when he made it big, he looks back and he's not forgotten. He says, I remember what it was like to go to sleep when I was hungry. I remember not being able to go on the trip because I couldn't afford it. I know it's a shame because I know from a lot of people that say, if I had only known that somebody was struggling in the class to pay the trip, I would have paid the trip. I know lots of people that would say that. What did it cost already? Another 20, 30 pounds? I'd be glad to give the 20, 30 pounds so that somebody doesn't miss out, so that this child doesn't have to stay home. Sometimes there are discreet ways of doing it, and it's very clever. It's better to do it that way. But to start feeling other people's pain, and that's what Shemitah is all about. One of the ideas within Shemitah, it allows everybody to once in a while experience the fact that I have nothing to eat and what it is not to have anything to eat. And then you look at poor people, you'll never look at them again the same way. You just won't. Because nowadays we say to ourselves, if he would just work a little bit harder, or if he just would be a little bit more flexible with what kind of jobs he would do, or if he didn't, dig his heels in, or if he didn't do this, we always, do you not think that many people often think they have they've worked out why different people who are struggling financially. And if they just had your head, they wouldn't be struggling financially. They would understand everything. It's not for you to figure out why they are or why they aren't struggling. Start understanding pain of other people and start giving to them. Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz told a brilliant story. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful story. It's simple, but the simplicity of it has a tremendous beauty. And he said, when he was newly married, this Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz is one of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim in Yerushalayim, most well-known personalities in the English-speaking Yerushalayim. And when he was newly married, he said he didn't have an oven. But what did they have? They had a wonder pot. There used to be something that was called a wonder pot that you used to put on the stove, and that would do the job of an oven. Pardon?
Yeah.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in that generation. He says that's what we had. Yeah.
No, we used to use it for Pesach.
Oh, very good. Yeah, because Pesach is very hard with the. Hi, Robert. So we have this wonder pot, right? So this guy, so Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz said they bought this tiny little apartment on the 4th floor in Sanhedrin Mochevet, which was really cheap. And he says, we were roughing it out. I was on in Kola, my wife was working, and we were trying as much as we can to rub 2 pennies together. And that was it. And we had this wonder pot. We didn't have an oven. And one night, there's a fellow who came and knocked on my door. And I opened up the door, and the poor man's standing there. And the poor man says to me, please help me. He said, what is it? He says, I'm so strapped for cash. I'm so financially gone. Please help me. He says, what is it? He says, let me tell you how bad things are. I don't even own an oven. Do you know a single person that doesn't even own an oven? Have you ever met someone like that? You probably never even met someone like that. Right? This is what the poor person says to Rabbi Berkowitz. And Rabbi Berkowitz is about to triumph and say, what do you mean? We don't have an oven. Come on in, I'll show you. But he realized, he says, wait. My wife and I are two 20-odd-year-olds who are roughing it out and are really enjoying trying to make the best or the most of the fact that we have very little money. He has a father who's got children, who's got sorrows, who's got, he's not happy. What am I going to gain with this one-upmanship? Hey, I'm just like you. I also don't have an oven. We were okay about it. He was depressed about it. He was totally broken by it. If that's what he's saying, have you ever met another person that doesn't own an oven? So he says, I realized that was the wrong thing to say to the man. It's not right to then rub it in his face. Say, I'm so sorry, I'll give you charity. And the guy said, I gave him something. More than I could, maybe more than I could afford. But I realized this guy was really, really depressed about it, even though I was in the same situation. But I was okay about it, and he wasn't. And that's for a lot of people. Sometimes you are okay about certain things, and other people really struggle with them. And just because you're okay with it doesn't mean that other people are okay with it. Everybody grew up with their set of values. Everybody grew up with their set of priorities, things that are really, really important to them and things that are not so important to them, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm not a big guy for birthdays. Big deal. So what? So you made it to another year. You have to make this big fuss, and you have to, wear a silly hat and get cards, and then go out to a restaurant and spend a lot. Whatever. I don't do birthdays so much. My wife likes birthdays. My mother-in-law loves birthdays. Whenever we have a birthday in the family, she makes cakes and she makes things, etc., etc. She doesn't have to like them. She loves making birthday parties for my kids. Let her make birthday parties for my kids. Let her bring the cakes, and we'll take pictures and we'll sing. We'll do everything. I'm not going to say, well, you don't have to do it. Oh, it's unimportant. It's not unimportant. It's important to her, and if it's important to her, then she should do it. Right? And I shouldn't tell her, well, it's not important to me. So she has to work with your level of priorities. She's got her things. I got my things. Doesn't have to work that way. But we tend to look at other people through our eyes, and we tend to judge other people through our eyes, and therefore some people we really are able to connect with and to feel for them, and some people we think like, oh, they're making such a big deal about nothing, right? To you it's nothing. To them it's a big deal. One way or another, whether it is in the positive, as we mentioned before, certain things that other people like to do that you don't think are so important, or in the negative. Once I've had the discussion with people once. I said, come to the end of the year. I don't know about you, but come to the end of the school year. And it's always a discussion. What are we doing in the summer? Summer's not that long but what are we doing in the summer? And I say to my wife, I said, I just don't understand. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Come to the end of the year. You always look at all the money that you've saved up over year. You save up a whole year. You try to save up a whole year for holidays. I said to my wife, I had a mitzvah this year. I had a mitzvah last year. There's very little left beyond the bar mitzvah to take a big holiday, right? Baruch Hashem, I'm able to afford a bar mitzvah. I'm happy. I'm not going into debt for a bar mitzvah. Finished. Great. Brilliant. But sometimes I look around and I see people that I think that, I know these people are definitely making a lot less money than I am. Right? But they're taking the whole family on a 3-week holiday to Israel, and you're like, how does that work? Right? And sometimes I say to people, I have a good friend, and I discuss this with him sometimes, and I said to him, look, I just don't understand it. I know that these people are, they don't have a great job, so where are they coming with the money from? And I say, I pay whatever school fees I can. I pay the maximum that I can in school fees. Still, at the end of the day, with school fees, it just... Unless you're really, really making a fortune of money, you can't really afford to pay everything, right? Because once you get to school fees with high school, you look at £650 a month per child. It starts getting very, very heavy. So, okay, so you do as much as you can. Everywhere you do as much as you can, right? Now, I've paid whatever I can. After I pay all my school fees, there's not that much left for holidays. But I see it as a priority to pay for my children's education above taking a holiday. And I said to my friend, I don't understand these people. They're not. I know they're not paying full school fees, but they're going on a holiday. And I wonder if schools, because I know that in King David sometimes they struggle with this one. For example, some of the governors have told me that they go to people that are driving brand new 66, 67 Reg Mercedes and ask them for the £1,500 or £2,000 of voluntary contribution. It's a voluntary contribution. I don't have the money for you. They've just been to the Bermudas with all their kids, and they've been on a big cruise, and they bought themselves a brand new Mercedes. But for the £2,000 for their kids' school, they don't have it. And it's a question of priorities. But this fellow said to me, he says, look, these people a whole year round, things are so difficult that they need this. They can't live without going away for a week or two in the summer. Otherwise, it'd be too much for them. You can manage without it, and I can. We stayed home last year, and we had a brilliant time. I even saying to my wife, if we're not, we have a plan maybe of going to camp. But if we don't go to camp, we'll stay home. It was great to stay home. Every morning, wake up at 9 o'clock. You go daven late Shachris, 9 o'clock. Then you come home, you learn a little bit. You take your kids out in the afternoon. I slept in my own bed. I didn't have to schlep all sorts of foods and utensils and bikes and drive yourself meshug every time it rains. I don't know what to do. And you're stuck in this little caravan in the middle of Wales. And it's Ochen Vey and you feel you're about to float away in that caravan. I'm home in my bed with my blanket, with my pillows, with my pajamas, with my everything. It's brilliant. Where else would I want to go? So my wife says, we need to go for a few days. Okay, so we'll go for a few days. Yep. She doesn't feel exactly the same.
You
Well,
need to summer for a few days.
okay, then
Then you
a
get
few,
to relate to other
a
people's
few
suffering.
days is easy. When you go away for two, I remember we were away for 2 weeks. The packing up you have to do for 2 weeks. You need a holiday when you get there from packing up, and you need a holiday when you get home from unpacking. You have to think of everything, and now you're in the middle of Wales and you don't have milk or you don't have bread. Go figure.
But
Don't have food with you.
So nice when you get back home.
You appreciate it then.
So nice when you get back home. But that's what it is. But to me, but that's what he said. He says, to you, it might not be a top priority. To other people, it is a top priority. Now, you might say, okay, they have their priorities skewed. Maybe. But you can't take... Somebody just asked if I'm selling a Dodge Charger. What's a Dodge Charger? What's that got to do with the shear?
It's a nice car.
It's a good charger. Yeah, it's a good car. Got 2000. Anyone selling a 2017 Dodge Charger will collect if needed. Thank you, Willie. 2 thumbs up for that comment. Great comment. And you always get one person that has no shaykhs to it. He just gives this comment like, what are we speaking about? Swimming pools? I'm like, swimming pools? Like, but that's it. You cannot take your own ideas and ideals and impose them on other people. What you believe is important is your beliefs, and what other people believe is important is their beliefs. And you can't just decide what I think is right and everybody else is wrong. There's 1,000,001 ways to see the world. And Shemitah is about starting to see the world through other people's eyes, understanding other people's struggles, and understanding that you cannot always see it only through your eyes. And when you start seeing things through their eyes, and you start learning about what other people go through and understanding their suffering and being able to help them, that's a very, very special thing. And that's one of the reasons and one of the understandings of Shemitah. Again, apologies for a shorter share tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for those who came live. Somebody who watched live, please like and share if you did enjoy this.
Yeah. Good.